Tell me something. Have you ever walked into a room full of people, people you once laughed with, loved with, trusted with your whole soul, yet suddenly felt like a stranger in your own life? Because if you have, you're not broken, you're not too emotional, you're not changing for the worse. You, my love, are waking up. And the moment a woman begins her spiritual awakening, when she starts healing, reclaiming her worth, and rising into her feminine power, something inside her shifts so deeply that the world she once belonged to no longer feels like home. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly why you feel disconnected, why people suddenly feel distant, and why this transformation is the greatest blessing of your life. And before I continue, make sure you subscribe, because if you're on this journey, you're going to need a space that feeds your healing, your confidence, and your feminine energy. You ever catch yourself sitting across from someone you've known for years, a friend, a partner, a family member, and suddenly feel a strange emptiness sitting between you? Like the conversation is happening, the words are flowing, but your soul isn't there anymore. It feels like you're watching your own life as if it were playing on a screen, observing everyone and everything, yet not truly connecting. At first, you wonder if you're tired, overwhelmed, or simply off. But then the same feeling shows up again in different rooms, different faces, different moments. A silent question whispers inside you, why don't I feel connected to any of this anymore? If you've asked yourself that, stay with me and make sure you subscribe right now, because you're not losing your ability to love. You're losing your tolerance for relationships that don't match your new level of emotional awareness. It starts quietly, like a soft unraveling. You notice the way certain conversations feel shallow, how certain people talk but never actually speak. You notice how the things you once tolerated now feel irritating, even suffocating. What you're feeling is not emotional withdrawal, it's emotional awakening. There's a version of you, the older version, who once accepted noise as connection, chaos as closeness, inconsistency as love. She lived in survival mode, bonding through wounds, maintaining emotional ties through fear of being alone. But now the healed parts of you are waking up, stretching, breathing, refusing to settle. You've outgrown the emotional frequency you once lived on, and every time you rise, the gap between who you are and who they still are becomes painfully noticeable. You ever wonder why the jokes that once made you laugh now feel empty? Or why the people who once felt like home now feel like memories you've outgrown? It's because growth changes your energetic alignment. Your feminine energy is shifting from wounded survival to intuitive power, and not everyone can meet you there. There's a moment in every woman's life when she stops being impressed by noise and starts craving presence. A moment when emotional bonding becomes sacred, not something handed out freely to anyone who asks. But the moment you stop giving low-frequency people free access to your spirit, they stop feeling familiar, and you start feeling disconnect. Not because you've lost connection, but because you've finally found your truth. The strangest part is how sudden it feels. One day you're laughing with someone, the next you're wondering how you ever belonged in their world at all. This shift feels lonely, but it isn't loneliness. It's separation from the old self you've finally outgrown. Let me break this down, and as I do, subscribe if this is already speaking to you, because this journey is deep and you deserve guidance while stepping into your next level. There's something else that happens when your emotional intelligence expands. You begin to see people clearly, too clearly. You hear the subtle tone behind their words. You sense the emotional distance behind their affection. You feel their intentions, their fears, their unresolved wounds. It's like your intuition suddenly upgraded, and no one warned you. The things you used to brush aside, mixed signals, inconsistency, avoidance, shallow bonding, suddenly stand out like flashing red lights. You can't unsee them, and once you see the truth of someone's emotional capacity, your heart can't pretend anymore. That's what creates the disconnection. You're no longer connecting to who they appear to be. You're connecting to who they truly are. And in many cases, that person cannot meet you on the emotional level you now live on. Have you noticed how certain people get uncomfortable around you now? They may not say it, but they feel it. The shift in your presence, the calm in your tone, the boundary in your silence. They sense that they can no longer manipulate your empathy, use your kindness, or hide behind their charm. Your emotional intelligence became your shield, and the moment you stopped being emotionally accessible to them, the bond weakened. Narcissistic dynamics rely on blind loyalty. Wounded dynamics rely on emotional labor. Trauma bonding relies on shared pain. But healing interrupts all of that, and that interruption feels like disconnection, but it's protection. There's a moment many women don't talk about, the moment she realizes she's been carrying the emotional weight of every relationship she's ever been in. The moment she sees how much she has held together with her softness, her patience, her ability to forgive. You might know that moment. The moment you realize you were the emotional backbone of every connection. You held the conversations. You held the emotional safety. You held the repair. You held the love. But what happens when the woman who always overgave stops? When she pulls back just a little? When she decides she no longer wants to parent grown adults, rescue emotionally unavailable men, or carry the entire connection on her back? What happens is the illusion breaks. The people who relied on your emotional labor begin to fall away. They don't say it, but they feel abandoned. Not because you left them, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself. This is where the disconnection grows sharper. It's not mutual distance. It's the absence of your overfunctioning. And those who depended on it feel the gap. They feel the shift. They feel the loss of the version of you who healed them while you broke yourself. And it's not just romantic relationships. This awakening affects friendships, family, colleagues. You start to see who always initiated, who always listened, who always supported. You start to see the imbalance. You start to feel the weight of every one-sided connection. And once a woman sees the truth, she can't go back. She can't unfeel what she feels. She can't unlearn what she knows. And she can't unknow the emotional reality beneath the surface. That clarity creates disconnection, but it also creates liberation. And if you're feeling that, subscribe right now, because I promise you, you're not walking this transformation alone. And then comes the shift many are not prepared for, the awakening of feminine energy, not the soft, romanticized version people post on social media. I'm talking about the deeper feminine energy, the intuitive, grounded, receptive, spiritually aligned version of you, the woman who no longer forces connection, the woman who no longer fights for crumbs, the woman who no longer tries to earn love, the woman who values her emotional safety more than her desire to belong. When this awakened feminine version takes over, your entire relational world shifts. Your aura changes, your boundaries sharpen, your intuition becomes loud, and suddenly, people can't hide their truth from you anymore. Some pull away because your calm exposes their chaos. Some feel intimidated because your strength exposes their emotional immaturity. Some distance themselves because your presence triggers their unresolved wound. And some disappear entirely because they can no longer feed on your empathy. Feminine awakening does not disconnect you from people, it disconnects you from dysfunction. But that loss of dysfunction often feels like loss of connection, because the old self bonded through emotional wounds, not emotional alignment. And somewhere in the middle of this awakening is a realization so subtle it almost hurts. The realization that you've stopped ignoring red flags. You see them instantly now. The way he avoids accountability. The way she turns every conversation back to herself. The way someone gives only when it benefits them. The way their energy feels off. Their intentions feel muddy. Their presence feels heavy. You feel everything deeper, because your nervous system is no longer numb. The trauma that once made you tolerate the unacceptable has now been replaced with self-awareness. You've stopped bonding with people based on pain and started evaluating them based on emotional integrity. And most people fail that test. This is where the disconnection becomes the loudest. When you see truth, masks fall. When masks fall, relationships shift. When relationships shift, The heart feels alone, but the soul feels free. And yes, it's unsettling. Yes, it feels like losing parts of your life. Yes, it feels like something is breaking. But the truth is, it's something being rebuilt. You're not disconnecting from people. You're disconnecting from unhealthy patterns. You're disconnecting from low emotional intelligence. You're disconnecting from trauma-driven attachments. You're disconnecting from anything that doesn't honor the woman you've become. And if this is speaking to your soul, pause for a moment and subscribe, because this journey, your journey, deserves to be supported, understood, and guided with wisdom, not judgment. You're not losing connection. You're regaining yourself. Say it again. You're not losing connection. You're regaining yourself. And the path back to yourself always requires walking away from what no longer recognizes you. You ever notice how at some point, the things you used to accept with a smile now make your spirit recoil? It's almost shocking, like trying to return to a childhood home, only to realize the doorways are too small, the rooms too cramped, the furniture too fragile for the woman you've become. What once felt comfortable now feels suffocating. What once felt normal now feels unacceptable. Standards are funny like that. They don't rise in a single moment. They rise slowly, quietly, in the spaces where you finally tell yourself the truth. And once they rise, everything that doesn't meet them begins to fall away, sometimes gracefully, sometimes painfully, sometimes all at once. It's strange how the heart recognizes misalignment before the mind admits it. The same man whose attention once made your stomach flutter now feels like emotional noise. The same friends who once felt like your entire world now feel like anchors pulling you backward. And the version of you that once over-explained, overgave, overcompensated, that woman suddenly feels like a ghost you no longer relate to. That's the thing about emotional evolution. It doesn't just change what you want, it changes what you can no longer tolerate. And that's where the disconnection quietly begins. Because the moment a woman realizes she is a high-value woman, not from ego but from healed self-awareness, she stops entertaining anything that disrupts her emotional safety. She stops participating in conversations that drain her feminine energy. She stops bonding with people through shared wounds. And once those patterns fall away, you naturally drift from the people who depended on those patterns to stay emotionally close to you. If this already feels like your story, pause right here and subscribe, because your awakening is not random. You're stepping into emotional maturity most people never reach. There comes a moment too where your intuition starts protecting you before you even understand why. You've probably felt it, that sudden heaviness when you're around someone who doesn't have good intentions, or that quiet discomfort when you're talking to someone who smiles at your face but secretly resents your growth. There are people your soul no longer allows you to get close to, and you don't know whether it's anxiety or awareness, but you feel it, like your inner world is rearranging itself to shield you from the pain you're no longer meant to experience. And you may wonder, why am I distancing myself from people who never hurt me? But sometimes they didn't hurt you yet. Sometimes your spirit simply knows they can't go where you're going. There are frequencies your healed self can no longer merge with, emotional climates your nervous system refuses to re-enter, patterns your subconscious is now trained to avoid. This is spiritual protection, masquerading as disconnection, and that protection often arrives before the revelation. If you've ever pulled back from someone for no logical reason, only to later see their true intentions, your intuition has been doing the work all along. And if you've experienced this, subscribe now, because this level of awareness is meant to be guided. This is where another shift happens, one that is both liberating and heartbreaking. When you begin healing truly deeply from the root, your attachment style changes, meaning you stop being attracted to the people who once triggered your trauma. You stop desiring the emotionally unavailable man who breadcrumbed you just enough to keep you from leaving.
You stop bonding with people who only understand chaos, because chaos was their first language. You stop chasing validation from people who can't give it. Healing rewires what you crave. At first it feels like a loss. You don't react the same. You don't obsess the same. You don't tolerate the same. You don't chase anymore. And when you don't chase, some people simply disappear. They were never there for the real you. They were there for the void you carry. The version of you who accepted emotional crumbs. The version of you who believed love meant suffering. But once you heal the wound that bonded you to them, the bond itself dissolves. This is the part no one tells you about trauma recovery. Healing doesn't just change your past, it changes your future by removing the people who were only compatible with your pain. And yes, it makes you feel disconnected, but disconnected from who, from what, from the suffering you spent years calling love. If this resonates even a little, hit subscribe now. You're awakening faster than you think, and then almost unexpectedly, your silence becomes sacred, not a punishment, not avoidance, sacred. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop giving access to people who drain your emotional resources. You stop filling every quiet moment with noise, with scrolling, with reaching, with emotional labor. You begin to protect your energy like it's a currency. You begin to treat your peace like it's a home. There's a kind of power in a woman who no longer needs to speak to be understood. A woman whose silence makes others uncomfortable because it reveals more truth than her words ever did. You begin to understand that silence isn't distance. Silence is discernment. Silence is the pause between the old life and the new one. Silence is the doorway to a different version of you, and it's in that silence that you start noticing who disappears and who leans in, who respects your boundaries and who tries to cross them, who values your presence and who only valued your availability. Silence cleans the room without saying a word, and the people who remain uncomfortable with your silence are often the ones who benefited from your lack of it. This is why you feel disconnected. It's the result of no longer performing emotional labor for people who never reciprocated. If this reflection is stirring something deep in you, make sure you subscribe, because more women than ever are stepping into this phase, and you're not alone in it. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, you begin walking into a new chapter of life. Without even realizing the old one has ended, you become less interested in proving your worth and more interested in simply living your truth. You stop trying to fit spaces that shrink your soul. You stop holding on to relationships out of habit. You stop grieving people who are still alive but emotionally unavailable. The shift feels like shedding skin, raw, uncomfortable, exposing. You're losing pieces of your past, and some of those pieces were people. Some were identities you clung to. Some were dreams you outgrew. Some were versions of you that kept you safe once, but would destroy you now. There is a quiet grief in becoming a new version of yourself. You mourn not just who you lost, but who you used to be. The woman who tolerated too much. The woman who loved too hard. The woman who settled for half love because she was afraid of having none. You mourn her even as you rise beyond her. And yet, there is something gentle about this grief. It's not the kind of pain that breaks you. It's the kind that shapes you. It's the kind of ache that tells you you're moving into alignment, not away from it. The kind of ache that whispers, this is necessary, this is growth, this is transformation. The disconnection you feel is not emptiness, it's spaciousness. Space for the life you're stepping into. Space for healthier emotional bonding. Space for relationships that honor your boundaries. Space for love that doesn't hurt. And as you stand in this transitional space, half in the old world, half in the new, you begin to sense something rising inside you, something strong, something knowing, something that feels like coming home to yourself for the first time in your life. If you feel that rising, if you feel that shift, if you feel that quiet but undeniable transformation, then subscribe, because your next chapter requires a version of community that understands your awakening, not one that fears it. And maybe that's the ultimate truth under all of this. You're not disconnected from everyone. You're disconnected from the life you outgrew, from the wounds you healed, from the patterns you broke, from the identities you shed. You're not losing connection. You're reclaiming alignment. You're not becoming distant. You're becoming whole. You're not breaking apart. You're becoming the woman you were always meant to be. You're not disconnected from everyone. You're disconnected from the version of you who accepted less than she deserved. This is your rebirth. This is your awakening. This is your transformation. Tell me in the comments, have you been feeling this shift in your life? If this video helped you see yourself more clearly, don't forget to like and share it, and make sure you subscribe for more powerful insights on healing, feminine energy, emotional intelligence, and becoming the woman you were born to be. Finally, drop your ideas for future topics in the comments. I want to create the content you need on your journey.